the biggest problem. Actually, you know what? It's the biggest problem in all relationships, communication. Okay? Husband and wife, parent and child, employer and employee, friends, us and our Creator, communication. And so if we don't understand what he means when he says what he says, just like if your person you're communicating with doesn't understand how you meant what you said, because you think the word means one thing and they took it a different way, there's no communication. So we have to know when he says, and we know the verse that we launch out of, which is this idea of the parable which says, well done, you good and trustworthy servant, which are the words I think even Christians teach that you want to hear. Enter into the joy of the master. Then you should really understand, well, if it says well done, the next thing he says is what you well did. You were good, you were trustworthy, and you were servant. What we have to understand as we're looking at this is saying, look, greediness can be looked at in two different ways, all right? This is to be ready as a blessing and not as greediness. In other words, you're doing this to be a blessing, not because you want to gain anything or not because we're not collecting it because we're being greedy. So you can take it from either direction. The whole idea is to be a blessing or to be a flow-through of blessing, okay? If I've taught you nothing about the use of financial things in this world by the Creator, it's that he wants us with all things to be flow-throughs, conduits, so that he gives to us so we can be a blessing to continue that outflow to others, right? Okay, you are never meant to be an end point, but he wants you to give as you purpose in your heart. Okay, which is why I tell people often enough when they don't know what to do, I try, not always successfully, but I try for myself to do whatever the first number comes into my head. Okay? Not the number I thought about intellectually, just because that's almost always coming up from the heart. All right? That first thought is the one I try to go with. Okay? Because that first thought is not filtered through your budget, not filtered through your bank account, it's just your heart. Okay? And so I tell people, strongly consider whatever the first thing that comes to your head. I'm not saying you have to use that one. I'm just saying, but that one came from down here, most likely, in the heart. Sowing sparingly and sowing for blessing has to do with how it's relative to you. Okay? One person can give $100 and it's sowing blessing. Another person can give $100 and it's sparing. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so you have to look at you. And by the way, this is critically important. Never, ever look at anybody else. Don't compare yourself when it comes to this kind of stuff to anybody else. Don't look at what they're doing and feel, either jealous or prideful, right? You could be looking down at them because they're giving less, or you could be looking up at them and all depressed because you can't give as much. You do what you can with integrity, okay? Because this is not about the amount. It's about the amount relative to you. Is it abundance according to you, or is it sparing according to you? This is the game of growing into the image of Yeshua. And so most of the world isn't in the game. They don't even know there's a game. And I hate to call it a game, but you understand the analogy I'm making, right? They don't understand there's a race. And the race is to the finish line of the kingdom. But they're running, if the racetrack is this way, they're running that way, they're running that way. They're not running because they don't know. They don't know. And the only reason you know is because he told you, right? He poked you. It's not, and you didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. He picked you. Who knows why? He knows why, okay? I don't know why he picked me. I don't know why he picked you, okay? And some of you, please never do this. Don't look at somebody and go, I wonder why he picked that one. Don't ever do that. Don't start judging. The reaping and sowing thing is a universal law. He put it in place. It works every time without exception. Okay? You reap what you sow. Now, it does not, just for clarity, I've said this many times, it does not mean that you reap what you sow. You're going to reap because you sow. Okay? In other words, if I sow money, it doesn't mean I'm going to reap money. Okay? So when he says you reap what you sow, in other words, if you sow abundantly, you reap abundantly. It doesn't mean the thing you sowed will come back exactly that thing. All right? The verse does say you'll reap what you sow, or Elohim will not be mocked. You do reap what you sow. But it's talking about the heart, remember what it said in here, right? Out of the abundance of your heart, how you are going to make your decisions, that's going to be the criteria or the measuring stick for how much you reap in whatever form it comes. Some of you are struggling in your life because you got too much won't instead of can't. And so he's not going to help you. You know, some of you think, well, there we are with all that personal development stuff. Everything in here is personal development, so you personally develop into him. Okay? What part of this is so hard to understand? Oh, no, I just want you to teach me about the calendar and the Sabbath and not eating. Okay, good. Then you're going to stay in kindergarten, spiritually. Okay? Because I could teach a kindergartner how to eat right and what days to do. Okay? All right? So where do you want to be? Do you want to still sit there choking on milk, or do you want to eat the meat? See, the meat is you becoming Yeshua-like. Okay? Which means you have to do your part. And in some areas, it may not be much, but he's still going to sit there waiting for you to do your part. Tenderly loving towards one another. Tenderly. Okay? Tenderly doesn't mean tenderizing. You know, like when you grab the mallet and start smacking the meat to tenderize it. Tenderly. Gently. Okay? With the understanding that the person may be breakable or fragile. Tenderly. Okay? Towards one another. In appreciation. If the other person has no idea that you appreciate them, you've made a mistake. Matter of fact, one of the things that I really appreciate myself is how many of you get up and say how much you appreciate what we do here. Okay? Because that's a great expression of, well done, you're helping me. Like, we appreciate you. Not well done that maybe from above necessarily, but you're saying what you're doing is getting the effect you're wanting. What expectancy do we have? The kingdom. The return of Yeshua, the resurrection, the setting straight of all things, and the kingdom. But are you rejoicing in that expectancy? Because I watch a bunch of you, and I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but I watch a bunch of you who get nervous when the world is doing this, and the world's falling apart, and the government's doing this, and this one's doing that, and diseases. And why does that cause fear and problems? I'm rejoicing in the expectancy, because that all has to happen. And why am I not upset or worried about it? Because I expect it to happen. But I also expect that afterwards, the other stuff is going to happen. Okay? Are you rejoicing in the expectancy? No, I don't like what's happening now. But it was supposed to happen. Do you know how many times Yahweh seems to use, in the scripture, it uses, and he inspires people like Paul to write things like, you know, the idea of steadfast, clinging, utmost. Okay, these ideas that take an awful lot of effort and discipline. Because it doesn't just say continue in your prayer. Be steadfast in your prayer. I don't know, I haven't looked up the word in a while, but to me the word steadfast has a really strong idea of reliable. That you are reliable in your prayer. You're reliable in continuing in your prayer in a consistent way. Because if I know someone is steadfast in their job, I know I can rely on them. Okay? Are you reliable in your prayer life? Can he rely on you to be continually connecting vertically?